Welcome to BAL, Building Athletic Lifestyles. I'm Neil. This is part 4 of the Fundamentals series. If you missed any of the previous parts, there is a link down below. You can go and watch those videos there. Do try and watch them in order because we build on them brick by brick. Today, kicking into variables, the sexy stuff. So with volume, it's the total work you're actually doing in your workouts itself. Today we're focusing a little bit more on weight training than anything else. An easy way of clarifying it is sets times reps times load. Load being the weight that's actually in that movement itself. When we spoke about progression last week, we did speak about how with that progressive overload, you're often looking to increase either reps or load anyway. There are other ways you can maximize that progress, but we've already sort of covered those. So today we're focusing a little bit more on those sets, particularly the working sets, the tough sets that they're often called in literature. Essentially those sets that you're actually taking to some degree of effort that we spoke of before. Maybe it's that 2 reps in the tank. Another important point of volume is that it lends itself to skill acquisition and any neurological adaptation, particularly if you're very new to lifting. It's new movement patterns, new movement paths that you've got to learn as well, and efficiency through that will improve, but you need a degree of volume to actually challenge you to adapt to that in the first place. It's why you see volume can start off quite low, but very large gains made by beginners. And actually, as you go through your journey of training, you'd expect the volume to go up, but at times, particularly as you get towards that higher genetic limit, you'd actually expect the progress you make to get smaller and smaller and smaller. Particularly in terms of skill acquisition, the more you repeat a movement, the more you practice a movement, the more efficiently you're going to actually move through that movement pattern. A couple of pretty pictures for you today. I'm not much of an artist, but hopefully you can still follow through. So at the bottom here, there's a volume. So again, that's background to that total work you're doing. And then you've got the gains, your hypertrophy, the muscle building that you're actually generating up on the y-axis here. So the graph itself, it isn't drawn to any scale as such. It's more of a visual representation than anything else. So we've got 2 points here. MEV is this first one. So that's your minimum effective volume or your minimum effective dose. Kind of hard to say an exact point on the graph because it's hugely individual about where either of these 2 points are. But what you'll find is that it's just by doing any volume, you will expect to see quite large progress, and there will be this point where that starts to taper off, the returns start to diminish. So you've got this almost this point of diminishing returns. From that point of diminishing returns, you've then got further progress that can be made. I've just illustrated with the red line underneath. There is still further progress to be made to a point. Where that point is, again, is hugely individual, but that's going to be your MRV, your maximum recoverable volume. That's the amount of volume that you can recover from to then actually still build muscle. That beyond that point is where you actually possibly then get that decline. That's where we're overtraining, overreaching, something like that. Just to give you a couple of benchmarks to help you understand where these points actually are. Again, these are just the guidelines. It's hugely variable. I just want to reiterate that. That MEV could be roughly around about 10 working sets on a given body part for a beginner. So say if you're doing 10 sets of different exercises on chest, that's where you get that minimum effective volume roughly, particularly for a beginner. And then across that maximum recoverable volume could be close to that 20 sets. Those sets are through a week as well, so it's not just in a given single session. It could be, but it may be split across multiple sessions through the week. One thing you will get as well is overlapping volume. So if you think for like the shoulders and the triceps, if you're doing your chest working sets, you may also be getting some degree of stimulus on them too. What I want you to take away from this is that it's not just about doing more and more and more and more and more. As you progress, as you get more efficient, you would expect that you would need to do more volume to make more progress, but it's about doing enough volume to make progress, not just a case of doing as much as possible and then hoping you haven't tipped off the edge of the cliff at the other side. So talking about this decline past that MRV on this left-hand graph, we've got the right-hand graph here. Fitness and fatigue are your 2 bars. Here we're just illustrating that fatigue is higher than your fitness. That essentially means you're not going to fully recover in between. So if you're putting yourself in this really big hole after every workout and not recovering adequately, you will then be making inefficient progress because you're actually losing some of that hard work you put in. You're not capitalizing on, you're not recovering fully, you're not building the muscle or anything like that. A couple of studies that just back up this fitness fatigue method is Badillo, who found that moderate volume actually made a greater degree of progress. Also, Wernbaum did a systematic review where he found that there was a plateau and a decline beyond 40 to 70 reps per body part. Now, again, that's going to be hugely individual where that point actually is, but it's just illustrating that it may be less than you're thinking. If you've got the appropriate effort and progression, from there you'll actually be making enough progress anyway. Less about a scientific review, but something that is a clear indicator of this is tapering. So fatigue management of any sorts, whether it's a deload or tapering before an event. If you're spending a period of time where you're reducing the volume, which allows you to then perform to a higher level on a given day, is a good indicator that this fatigue, particularly if you're really pushing yourself, more so towards elite athletes, that fatigue can limit your overall performance. Hopefully this has helped give you an idea about how much volume you should really be doing. Remember, it's about doing enough volume, not just doing as much volume as possible. I would encourage, if you're finding that you're particularly stalled or plateaued and you're feeling like you're having a hard time recovering, you're always tired, you're pushing really hard in the gym, but you're never actually feeling fresh, that's when you need to have a little look at the amount of volume you're doing. Also, we'll be having a look at things like nutrition in your sleep as well, which we'll cover at a later date. If you've got any questions about volume, drop them down in the comments below. I'll try and get back to you. Make sure you subscribe so you can find that video next week. Next week we'll be talking about frequency and exercise selection, and I'll see you in the next one.